Polymarket coming in and Kalshi, and then them doing deals with crypto.com to offer event markets, and Kalshi doing deals with Robinhood for similar. That's been really interesting for us because now there's a bit of a tailwind, whereas flashback 6 months, like it was a really tough challenge to try and educate investors of this is the future.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear episode 157 with Will Martin from LiveDuel, a decentralized blockchain-based betting exchange. Recorded in person at the next New York City Summit, Will shares the details of the marketing campaign that led to LiveDuel winning the Marketing Genius Award at the recent Starties event, how he's leveraging blockchain technology to inject liquidity into the LiveDuel exchange, the regulatory challenges of launching a crypto-based betting platform, why LiveDuel only offers soccer, current fundraising efforts, and much, much more. Will's an easy person to root for, and I'm confident that you'll agree after hearing this episode.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. If you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.
All right, we're back here on the Betting Startups podcast, and sitting to my right today, I got my friend Will from LiveDuel. Will, good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise.
What are you wearing here? Tell us about this golden tie around your neck.
Yeah, like just picked it up last night randomly, the Chinatown kind of area, Canal Street, Broadway, like just found it on the ground.
It's looking good on you.
Yeah, no, it's a good look against the Navy, like it's a nice little contrast. The Starties were last night, had a great experience. Great to have like a community-driven startups by startups type philosophy. Yeah, great meeting people, and to be nominated, to be shortlisted, and then to win, like it's just, how many cherries can you have on top?
There you go. Yeah, so this episode, by the time we get this out, it'll have been a few weeks after the Starties. But to your point, we're sitting here the morning after the Starties, which was our award show we held last night for startups by startups. And it was a heck of a night. And
unbelievable.
As you rightly pointed out, you were the winner of one of the 9 award categories for the category we call the Marketing Genius.
It's a humbly titled marketing genius. At least it's not me coming up with it, right? Like,
let's just talk real quickly about this particular award, and maybe you could talk about the backstory there with your nomination, what the particular campaign was that led for you to be nominated, be named a finalist, and subsequently win the award. Give us a bit of a sense of like what the marketing campaign was, and obviously we'll get into LiveDuel in a proper minute here.
Exactly, yeah. So the long story short is we're a decentralized betting platform, very focused on crypto. Flashback to the last World Cup, it was in November 2022, and then FTX collapsed at the start of November, so we're like 3 weeks away from the World Cup, and we're about ready to close a big funding round from the crypto world, and that just disappeared in an instant, you know? Like, so we're like, okay, our plans are completely changed.
Yeah.
So it's, necessity is the mother of all innovation, as they say. Like, we couldn't sponsor anything, we couldn't do paid advertising, like we literally could do nothing. So kind of backs in the wall kind of scenario. We did lots of like good user research. We'd made an early decision to focus on TikTok content for the World Cup just because it was where our audience and demo was. So essentially we came up with an interactive filter that allowed people to complete their bracket. So we loaded it with the real world quarterfinal data, and then people come on, make a video, country flag would appear over the user's head. They move their head left or right, that makes the pick, and then down below kind of completes their customized, personalized semi-final, final, then ultimately they pick a winner. Cost us about $300 to put together, and a lot of kind of hard work and hustle. We were like, if we got 1,000 videos made for this, it would be an amazing return. We got like over 1 million, like 1.3 million is probably like the latest count. Okay. 700 million views, 12,500 signups, about 600,000 creators around the world used it, and it just unearthed all this information and data and insight that we never could have got if we went, hey, we got loads of money to spend on a marketing budget, let's do paid advertising and pay influencers to hype us up or whatever.
I love the story, Will, just because like you said, like your backs were against the wall in that particular moment, and it really forced you to be creative and like think outside the box and kind of, as you say, like if you had a war chest of cash, you'd be doing traditional marketing campaigns, which may or may not have yielded the same results. And it just really like forced you guys to be creative there and execute well, and obviously it sounds like a rousing success. Yeah. So well earned then on that basis. What was your experience at the Starties last night beyond winning the award? And I don't want to make this a Starties discussion necessarily, but again, just being fresh off it here this morning, what was your take on it all, and what was the experience like for you as an attendee?
Incredible, like it's truly a unique kind of event because ours cookie cutter formula for award ceremony. You know, like let's sell a bunch of tables, let's have people in tuxes and ball gowns, and those award shows are amazing. Like great to recognize people, but it's very much okay. How much are you spending on buying the table, or how much are you spending to get nominated? Whereas this was like just kind of purely authentic, grassroots up, bottoms up type approach. Obviously the venue was pretty unique as well, like completely immersive. Everyone was taking like so many videos and pictures and just being like blown away by the venue. So I think the authenticity kind of really kind of shone through, and being able to chat with fellow nominees and other startups and speaking to the organizers, you guys, the WagerWire team, meeting Roger and having a good chat with him and stuff. Like it's kind of had that kind of level of transparency and openness, which startups should be all about. Like we're in an industry that's very top heavy, like very big industry players that a lot of startups are trying to disrupt or innovate against. So we need to stick together, whether we're competitors or not. The big boys are the real competitors.
Well, you're officially our new marketing spokesperson then with that little summary. Leave it to the marketing genius here to be our hype guy. Right on, Will. Well, Golden Tie looks great. Let's shift though and talk a bit more about what you're building with LiveDuel. You alluded to it a couple minutes ago, building a blockchain-based betting exchange. Why don't you unpack that a little bit and give the audience a bit more of a sense of what it is you guys are working on? Obviously, the audience will be familiar with both blockchain and betting exchanges. So what are you bringing to market that's a bit unique? And just give us like a 10,000-foot view on it all.
Yeah, 100%. So we kind of view ourselves like a hybrid between the two dominant betting models, which is the house, end users versus the house, and the betting exchange world, which is really big in Europe and starting to make waves now over in the US. So there's kind of pros and cons to both those models, and we're trying to sit neatly in the middle, taking what's happening in the world of crypto, decentralized finance, and bringing that over to prediction markets and sports betting and future event-based kind of markets. So there's a few innovations that we're kind of leveraging there. There's smart contracts, there's automatic market makers, which is quite an interesting one, which I can get into later. And then liquidity pools, which is probably what I like talking about most. So the liquidity pool is a smart contract that allows people to stake liquidity into that liquidity pool, or cash into that liquidity pool, shall we say. So you can imagine 1,000 people here at Next, each putting in $1,000. That's now a liquidity pool of $1 million. You can view that like a bankroll of the house. So when you come on and want to place a bet or a prediction, the pool steps in, matches your prediction. When I come on, same thing. So we both have a very great user experience, insurance transactions. But what we do on the other side then is the offsetting of risk. So, like a typical book, you're trying to attract people from all the different potential outcomes, and that's what we're doing in the background. So our focus is really on making the user experience as clean as possible. So we look like a sports book, home team, away team draw in soccer, home team, away team in US sports. So there's no craziness like a betting exchange that has 18 options for a soccer match, buy, sell, multiple prices, which gets confusing for people that are not down here in the financial district in the US, but the regular kind of average fan. So that's kind of what we're bringing to market, and community is a big factor for us, hence why we focus on TikTok and focus on creators and onboarding those guys. So obviously over the last kind of 6 months or so, prediction markets have had their kind of breakout moments, Polymarket, Kalshi. So it's a really interesting kind of space. We're focused just on sports to begin with because we think there's deeper connection you can build around fans around sports because it's, the last shared experience. There's always the next tournament. There's always the next league match, whatever the case may be. And, World Cup 2026 is our ultimate kind of Northern Star right now. Guiding lights, 50 billion will be wagered. How much of that action can we take?
So we'll rewind the tape just a minute here, Will. Let's talk about the origins of it. So I guess a two-part question. One, just give us a bit of a sense of the origin story of LiveDuel and sort of what prompted you to decide that the world needed a decentralized blockchain-based betting exchange. And then the second part to that, as you've been building it out, like how has the original theory or thesis maybe evolved over time? And you pointed out a minute ago the emergence of the prediction markets over the last 6 months, Polymarket, Kalshi, et cetera, that have really, I think now, like thrust, particularly from a US perspective, the idea of prediction markets, which are effectively exchanges under the hood. How's maybe like the original thesis evolved to the extent that it has with this now sort of rising tide of prediction markets? So yeah, origin story, and then how's that shifted?
Yeah, like my goal was to work here in Wall Street when I was kind of growing up. So I've always been kind of trader, interested in future outcomes, looking at like different reports where you can get an edge. So I did economics and computer science in a university, learned about arbitrage in commodities markets. I went that's interesting. Let's see if I can do that with sports betting and arbitrage between different books using exchanges, which were pretty new in Europe at the time. Got an A, made a bunch of money, and learned a lot as well along the way. After university, went into prop trading. So I was working for a firm based out of here, but had an office in Ireland, and I was like going to study, train for my Series 7, Series 63 kind of license to move over here with the view of becoming a broker or a trader. Fell out of love with that industry, but I did learn that high liquid markets in the equities world versus what I was able to exploit when I was in my undergrad of all these different operators having different prices and being able to take advantage of that. So that always kind of stuck with me, that sports betting markets are inefficient kind of by design. There's 10,000 operators, there's 20,000 operators in the world. It's kind of hard to know the true number. But when you have that many operators with different prices and liquidity is fractured across all those operators, you're going to have inefficiency. So I guess kind of flash forward, spent a bit of time working on Beats by Dre and the product marketing team. Hence maybe that might have had a few lessons along the way. But it was really at the height of the meme stock kind of phenomenon where this kind of really started to kind of take shape. When I was in the financial world, stocks weren't sexy, like to a certain crew it was, but people weren't hanging out online on Twitter and Reddit and Discord and Telegram groups sharing stock tips like they were during the meme stock kind of phenomenon. So I was interested in that kind of digital communities, driving community and engagement and ultimately deal flow to stockbrokers or Robinhood. It's a lot of user acquisition through that. So the thesis at the time was, okay, I'm into sports. What if Robinhood built a sports app? So kind of started along the basic kind of design, kind of showed that around and went, okay, there might be something here worth kind of exploring. Then liquidity is always the big issue in this industry. So I kind of reached out to the big betting exchanges, see if I could tap into their liquidity. I guess to kind of not take a shortcut, but if there's liquidity out there, why would I try and that's no problem. You can't charge a commission on top. You can't change the price. Our price is kind of set in stone. We'll pay you a modest kind of CPA. When I was like, okay, probably not the best thing to try and build all this new user interface and trying to onboard new users for a limited and capped LTV. DeFi Summer just happened right after when I first started exploring it. So that really kind of showed the possibility of what decentralized finance can offer. The big premise is, can you remove the middleman for the world of finance and have kind of trustless relationships amongst users? That just rang a bell with me going, can you remove the middleman from the world of sports betting in a trustless manner, and kind of snowball from there. So that was kind of the origin stories, or the multiple kind of light bulb moments. And it's not us being hey, let's change the world and come up with all this new stuff. It's all these different dots of different parts of the world kind of coming together, and it's how do you kind of package that together? So yeah, that's kind of the origin story. And then you're asking about
and it's how it's maybe evolved since then, and maybe it hasn't, right? But the point you just made, there is a lot of disparate pieces to what you're building here, and you're connecting all of these dots together. But has that evolved since the original light bulb moment, or have you really stayed true to that original concept?
Yeah, obviously a lot of things changed, but the overall arching kind of vision, relatively the same. We've always been betting exchanges are confusing to people. Yeah. That's why they kind of have a natural limit in Europe of scalability, because it's a certain type of user. It's not a sports fan who would use it. It's a sports person who's into trading or is very price sensitive will be the L customer there. So our goal has always been how do we abstract away the complications of being a betting exchange, adding in another layer, which is also confusing to a lot of people, which is blockchain. So that's been the kind of driving force, and the user experience of blockchain has gotten a lot better from when we first started, and it's still evolving as we speak. But account abstraction was something that we were pretty early on, but the tools that we can now use are much slicker and easier, that the user can sign up with their mobile number or their email or whatever kind of social login that they want to do. It's a Web2 product, use a fiat on-ramp to kind of come in and make it their first deposit, so they don't need to be this PhD student who's got a vast experience in crypto and blockchain. So I guess the vision has kind of stayed the same, but maybe the building blocks that we're using are kind of more advanced from what they were a couple of years ago.
How do you think about the ideal customer profile or persona, right? And I know you've talked to Jason Trost from Smarkets before about this on his podcast, and this notion of price and how much price is a determining factor for people when they make betting decisions. Obviously, a subset of the population is price driven, but for the most part, specifically for a more square recreational type bettor, they don't really give a shit about price to an extent, right?
Yeah.
So with the betting exchange that you're building, inherently betting exchanges are generally positioned on price. That is typically the differentiating factor. Layer in the blockchain and crypto aspect with LiveDuel. Who are you appealing to here, right? Are you trying to appeal to this price-sensitive customer? Are you trying to appeal to the meme coin guys and trying to bring them in? Who do you think is your ideal customer for a product like LiveDuel?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Like it's very, bail heavy, obviously being kind of sports focused. We're focusing just on soccer to begin with. So I guess that kind of narrows our focus a little bit more. Kind of 18 to, I'm almost 40, so I'm putting myself in
I'm
this
over
bucket.
40, don't worry about it.
So 18 to 40 is kind of our main demo. People that are tech savvy will be involved in like WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups that are talking about whatever sport that they're talking about. Obviously, soccer is our kind of starting point. So like we thought price sensitivity would be where we're going, and that didn't really cut through the noise. And we would have spoken with other betting exchanges that have done 0% commission offers that doesn't really move the needle at the end of the day. Maybe it will have a brief spike, but as soon as they try and like reintroduce their commission model, people are like, okay, well, that was cool, but now I'm going back to wherever I was. So our goal is not to be the first to market with a price or be the cheapest in the market to attract people. So we don't want to be involved in a race to the bottom. So we were kind of a mid-market kind of price. We're cheaper than a lot of sportsbooks, but we're not as cheap as some of the betting exchanges. But our ultimate goal is to grow and scale in volume, that we could ultimately kind of reduce the kind of fees that we charge over the course of time. But if you start at zero, it's very hard to introduce something afterwards. So we're starting high and with the goal to bring it down as we kind of grow and scale. So yeah, typical user for us, as I mentioned, kind of interested in sports, obviously, not as price sensitive. Community is probably a bigger driving factor for them. If you look at Gen Z and millennials, community is a big part of what their purchasing decision is going to be, especially in the digital landscape. Is there people like me that are talking about the same things that we can kind of get involved with? Because we really want to lean into the passion and emotion of sports. It's a shared experience. UEFA kind of released some crazy stat a few years ago about Champions League viewers. A lot of people watch Champions League by themselves because it's on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and once you hit a certain age, your Tuesday and Wednesdays are sat at home. So there's a digital potential there to bring people together that they can connect around the game that they're watching, chat with their friends. They might be on opposing sides for a bet, or they might be on the same side of a bet. So we did a lot of research into the communities that share picks and basically sweat out bets together, and just the level of engagement you see around, oh my God, it's going to happen. Oh no, it's not, like something happened. And that's kind of really the sweet spot of what we want to kind of target into, is that kind of shared experience, whether people are betting on sports or just being part of the action, like in the conversation.
And from a go-to-market perspective, where are you guys focused in terms of launching, and which geographies are you in? I'm particularly curious about just, again, the blockchain and crypto aspect, which might complicate potential licensing in certain markets. So I guess just taken all together, where are you guys focused, and what do you sort of see as the path of least resistance to getting the product to market from a regulatory perspective?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. That's kind of the question that we were looking to kind of get an answer to, and lawyers spend or charge a lot of money to get the right kind of answers on that. Yeah, for good reason. Like we don't want to make a shortcut decision right now that's going to screw us later on down the road. Like there's no point us doing something stupid because it might get us 1% better now, but it's going to cost us 100% later on. So yeah, kind of evaluating different jurisdictions, Isle of Man, to be Curacao. Those were the three that we kind of gave a good hard look at. Curacao is obviously still kind of constantly changing the exact new regulations that are coming in there. So Tabique looks like our kind of starting point, and that would allow us to kind of serve a lot of the world. Obviously not the major markets, but some of the more international markets. With us being soccer focused, World Cup is our big focus. 48 teams will qualify for that, and about 24 of them will be participants in the World Cup that we can potentially service. So LATAM, Africa, Southeast Asia, those will be our kind of starting points. And then it's really about what licenses should we go after next. Like Uber had a very similar strategy when they started off. Obviously, licensing is a bit different in that industry, but they couldn't just launch globally overnight. They had to be strategic about where they went. So we'll probably take a similar philosophy. Ireland will probably be our second license. Obviously, we're an Irish-based company, so it'd be nice to be able to hype ourselves up in our home market, and then potentially acquire different licenses as we move forward.
I mean, we're sitting here right now, as you said, in Lower Manhattan. Do you see any potential for you guys in the U.S. market at all, or is it just too fragmented across the different states with the different regulatory structures, and just, again, given some of the aspects to your platform, and particularly with the crypto and blockchain aspect? Is it just too uncertain here right now for you guys to meaningfully consider the US?
Yeah, definitely in the immediate short term. Like we're happy for bigger players with deeper pockets to test the limits and see what happens. Obviously, with prediction markets, that is completely being kind of blown up or blown out of the water. What will happen between states versus federal regulation with the CFTC versus gaming commissions from various states? I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, one way or the other. But you could see DraftKings doing DraftKings Predict or launching the trademark or whatever they've done recently. It's definitely things are changing, and we're keeping finger on the pulse of exactly what's happening, and that's great coming to places like New York for next to see what people are talking about. I'm expecting to happen to come down the road. The way we're structured, like technology-wise, it would be easy for us to take our automatic market makers, our smart contracts and liquidity pool and have a US-facing kind of product and entity, if that makes sense for us to do. Trying to do it state by state. We're trying to build the biggest liquidity pool possible. If we have to go and build 50 different liquidity pools, it kind of goes against the thesis that we're trying to bring to market, because the bigger the liquidity pool we build, the more efficient you can be with pricing, the more sports you can offer, the more markets you can offer. So yeah, always paying close attention to what's happening in the US because it's such a big market. It's, the industry is 7 years old, like we're very much at the start. So anything can change.
And especially like you pointed out, like with the state by state framework in place, you can't share liquidity across state lines right now, and we've seen some attempts of exchanges coming into the US, right? Profit Exchange and Novig and even Jason at SmartGets to an extent. Very challenging for them to accumulate the liquidity needed to run an efficient exchange by constraining it to a state-by-state basis. And in the case of Profit and Novig, they somewhat pivoted to sweepstakes-based models, which allowed them to then roll their product out across state lines and pool that liquidity, which now I think has been a big unlock for them. But it is a challenging environment to deploy the exchange model at scale. And
100%. Like, as you kind of mentioned at the start, like typical exchange users are more price sensitive, so the margins are probably lower in that kind of product category. So that immediately is just like, we can't make this work, if we have to have all these various different liquidity pools, because the efficiency just kind of disappears and dissipates from the market. I'd be trying to do right by end users by, being better priced and stuff like that, but the model wouldn't be able to stand up to that kind of fractured nature of it.
Absolutely. Let's shift and talk about the funding side of all this, Will. So, you got global ambitions, you got some complicated tech, you got all these things that cost money, the lawyers we talked about. Talk about the funding background to start with here. Have you raised money and sort of what's allowed you to get to this point?
Yeah, so we came through Techstars Web3 Accelerator program. That was in 2022. So everything was looking rosy in the garden at that point. And then obviously the FTX story that we shared at the top of the show really kind of impacted us there. But Avalanche have invested as well. So we're built on Avalanche. If people are curious about which blockchain we're using, and I can answer some questions why we're building on that specific chain. Adidas Family Office have also participated, and we're currently in the midst of our seed round, 2.5 million. We're about halfway there in terms of commits, and it's great coming out here to a city like New York where capital markets are kind of, this is the ground zero for it. Maybe shouldn't say ground zero for that, so if I cut that one. Yeah. Obviously being in a city like New York, capital markets are, this is where it's happening in the world. And then coming to something like Next, elite level, kind of great networking opportunities. So we're about 50% of the way there and hoping to close pretty soon. World Cup is our focus, so it's kind of incumbent on us to kind of get that funding closed so we can really kind of hit it big for that World Cup.
In terms of the discussions you're having with prospective investors or even the investors that have already committed to this round, what are you hearing from them in terms of the opportunity you're pursuing? Like, what's been exciting, and maybe what have been some of the tougher questions you faced from them that maybe are obstacles that remain in the way of them writing the check and getting the money in the account?
A betting startup is hard. Like, every startup is difficult, but in this industry, it's, I don't know how much more difficult than other industries. But being a startup, when you're not at zero and you're not at one, it's kind of, you're in this kind of awkward phase that, it's not just a pre-seed idea that be, hey, let's get behind this, let's put in a small bit of capital, because that's kind of what we've done previously. But we're not at launch either, where we're like, hey, we've got like 1 million users and we've got all this kind of volume and trading activity and TVL. So that's been like probably the biggest challenge, because I wouldn't view what we're doing as being revolutionary. It's more evolutionary, but it's taking disparate parts of, the crypto landscape, the traditional kind of exchange market and the betting markets kind of coming together. But what we've seen over the last kind of 12 months is that's exactly what happened at the industry at large. Polymarket coming in and Kalshi, and then them doing deals with crypto.com to offer event markets, and Kalshi doing deals with Robinhood for similar. That's been really interesting for us because now there's a bit of a tailwind, whereas flashback 6 months, like, it was a really tough challenge to try and educate investors of this is the future, whereas now the future is being kind of unearthed and has been proven to be very successful by other entities in other markets, not sports specific. So that's been really good for us. But I guess with every startup, like, there is a execution kind of potential issue because you're going up against people with very deep pockets, and we've kind of made that decision. I'm a big fan of game theory and behavioral economics from my economics days. So we've used that to kind of help us craft a narrative and a storyline that we could say, hey, we don't have to have a $100 million marketing budget to cut through the noise. And we kind of show that with our $300 marketing spend around the World Cup, which is obviously super competitive as well, that obviously there's a lot of eyes on something like that, but also there's a lot of marketing dollars coming in from all the big boys. So hopefully we're kind of proving our unit economics that we can move and drive this forward, acquire the users that we need to, because the ultimate equation we're all trying to solve is how much does it cost you to acquire somebody and what's their lifetime value. So those kind of unit economics are super, super important. And when you don't have infinite dollars to spend on marketing and sponsorships and celebrity endorsements and big free bet offers, you need to think a bit more crafty, kind of swim against the tide, so to speak, and think differently. So that's been some of the challenges we've had to overcome, but hopefully we're kind of proving it kind of piece by piece. And then next 12 months are super exciting for us.
Yeah, well, let's look ahead here, Will. I mean, you've referenced a few times now the World Cup. You got your eyes on the prize there, and then sounds like that is the focus over the next, what is it? I don't know, 15, 16 months, whatever is between now and then. But zoom out a little bit further here over like a 5-year time horizon. In 5 years' time, if everything goes to plan in your wildest dreams, where are you guys at in 5 years, and sort of what does life look like for you in LiveDuel?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the beauty about sports is that there's always the next tournament, the next season. Like, I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, like, so this year has been terrible, but hey, there's always next year, right? Like, so that's what we really love about sports, is that, like, there's this kind of predictable cadence to big tournaments and fixtures. So there's going to be no shortage of ways that we can move into other markets. We'd love to kind of build our roadmap alongside our community, just doing soccer to begin with, and then kind of spreading out into other sports, like obviously the US sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, etc. Formula One is quite interesting as well. We've seen a lot of stuff there, and maybe betting is maybe a bit behind the curve in Formula One world. So that could be really interesting, because I think, some data companies have done deals with the F1 for new kind of betting markets and stuff like that. So that could be really interesting for us. So it's really about tapping into fandom, tapping into the passion and shared excitement around sports, and seeing where LiveDuel can have an offering. So yeah, no shortage of different sports that we can move into. And yeah, it's really about growing that big liquidity pool. So I guess a distinction that we have is what's a betting activity versus what is a investment activity. So end users will be placing a betting activity versus people putting into the liquidity pool. That's an alternative investment, and that's the kind of legal distinction there. So we can potentially target a wider audience on that liquidity pool basis. So that's going to be really, really exciting to see how sports betting evolves, how crypto evolves, and kind of innovating and taking the ideas from all those industries and kind of seeing what works for our audience.
There's going to be no dull moments in your future, Will.
Yeah. It's exciting times. That's why this industry is so interesting,
All right, man, we're almost at the finish line here. I'm going to hit you with a couple rapid fire questions to finish up today. When you get up in the morning, what's the first app you check on your phone?
Ooh, good question. Kind of depends on the day. If we're talking like a weekend, it's different to what it would be on a weekday. Probably podcast, like
Betting Startups podcast?
Free promo, no, the Daily Show, the best one yet. Like, that's put it on while I'm kind of like waking up and kind of dusting myself off. That's probably the first thing I check. Obviously, messaging app is see who's kind of reaching out and stuff. So those would be the two that I go to.
All right, when you're out at the karaoke lounge later tonight, what song are you singing?
I have a horrible singing voice. I've only ever done karaoke once when I was living in Taiwan. Very limited back catalogue of English songs, so I got stuck with Toto Africa. I was like, yeah, I know those lyrics. Turns out I don't know all the lyrics, but it starts this high and just goes higher and higher, so absolute carnage. So I'll do that just for posterity's sake.
We'll accept that answer, Will. Last one here, if you could be somebody else just for one day, who would that be and why?
Ooh, dead or alive, or does
It's
it
an open
matter?
question. It doesn't matter.
That could be quite interesting. Like, I always kind of grew up wanting to be an athlete, so I definitely like to be like an elite level athlete. As a big Tottenham Hotspur fan, I think I'd go Harry Kane, just to see, like, he's like one of those guys who's just like insanely talented, but also just like a really dedicated pro. So it'd be interesting to see what is the day in the life of that athlete. Is it as glamorous as everyone can imagine? I'd imagine it's not, you know, like I imagine you have to do a lot of hard yards and hard grafting, but I think that would be fascinating to kind of take a look at behind the curtain. I spent a month in London in 2018 during the World Cup on England's big run. My wife joined me over there, and she took a big shining to Harry Kane, so that's her favorite footballer as a result of that. Yeah, it was pretty cool getting caught up in that energy of England in that big run. Unfortunately, didn't get the result, but hey, it was a good time over there. Yeah, no. Absolutely fascinating watching his kind of career, because he was kind of written off earlier on. And be like, he's probably not going to make it at the Premier League level, let alone almost winning a World Cup and stuff, and doing some nice things with Bayern Munich right now. So I think that kind of grit and determination is really appealing to me. It's not like he's this naturally gifted player who just had to show up and do his thing. You know, he had to work hard and spend extra time doing his own personal training sessions, and again, plays with that.
Probably some lessons in there that are applicable to startup life as well.
100%. If you don't have grit and determination in this industry, I've got bad news, you know.
100%. All right, well, for people that want to get in touch with you, learn more about LiveDuel, maybe talk about investment opportunities, etc., what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like liveduel.com, at LiveDuel across all the social platforms. We made a good decision there earlier on, just to get everything lock those up. Yeah. And then Will P. Martin everywhere else on personal socials, but Will at liveduel.com is my own personal email. So if people want to reach out, happy to kind of have a chat about, you know, helping us do amazing things here in the US around events, around the World Cup, because, you know, as I mentioned, that's going to be the big focus for us, and it's a unique World Cup given it's over US, Canada, and Mexico. So we'd love to be kind of boots on the ground, doing some in real life fan experiences and engagement. So yeah, Will at liveduel.com is the best way to reach out.
All right, Will, Golden Tie winner, Will Martin from LiveDuel. It's been good to chat with you, my friend. You're an easy guy to root for, so wishing you and your team all the best over the next little while, and look forward to continuing to follow your story. Thanks for coming by.
Appreciate it, Jesse. Thank you.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.